Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And in this video, we're going to finish or conclude the last section of money management, which was from our kind of self-improvement sessions that we were doing last previous videos, where we broke the money management down into three parts. We did budgeting, we did investing, and now we're going to do realty, which is investing in property as an investment and not just for just to live in. So and we're going to do some examples as well to show you that way you kind of get an idea of how things actually work. So, and they're not as complicated as people think, and that is the purpose of these videos. So first off, what we're going to do is explain that realty or property as an investment is different than buying for the purpose of just living in. If you're buying just a single family home to live in, that is going to be a black hole. It's going to just seep all your money. And I'm a strong believer that until you've reached the stage of where you're ready to retire in life, you don't want to buy into a single family home because it's just going to be taking away your money. So investing in property for the purpose of investment, buying property for the purpose of investment, I should say, is definitely different. And in that aspect, the goal is you making a profit out of the situation. Now, in larger cities, a lot of times, because of whether it's high taxes, whether it's high prices, whatever the case is, or a combination of both, you generally are going to probably need a multifamily home. In some smaller towns and smaller cities and smaller in states that have a lot of those kind of, like small towns within them, you sometimes can get a single family home and it can still be an investment because the cost and the taxes are so low that what you're charging in rent is still more than what you're paying for in your monthly mortgage statement. So we're going to break down all those numbers, what goes into everything. And yeah, so let's just jump right into it. So first thing we're going to start with is just getting an idea of what's being put down when you're putting down into a home. So generally speaking, when you're buying the home, and this is not going to be the focal point of the video, is the process of getting the home. That's kind of just something you got to save up for and jump into. But just to give you a little simple idea, when you buy a home, and there's a lot of sun coming in here right now, but that natural light at least allows you guys to really kind of see better. When you're buying a home, generally speaking, I messed up arrows, you're putting down either 3% or 20, and we'll get into that in a moment. You can choose either or, plus, and that's going down, plus about 5% in fees. Now, in my book, I actually break down, which I'm going to leave in the description, link in the description, the details of what those fees are made up of. There's things like lawyer fees and all these other kind of fees and stuff like that. But generally speaking, total, it's like about 5% of the price of what the home is. So if you're looking at a home for, like, say, for easy math, $300,000, then 5% of that would be like about $15,000. So you're looking at $15,000 on top of the 3%. So just to give you an idea, let me just pull out a calculator real quick because I'm not going to sit here and do all this crazy math in the head. If you have 300,000 of the price and 3% of that is 9. So you're looking at, if you were looking at something like, say, and this is just, like I said, to give you an idea of things, if the cost is 300,000, 3%, you're looking at 9,000 plus 15,000. So at that point you're looking at somewhere around like $24,000 is, you kind of jumping into the mix there. That's ballpark. It's not exactly, but it gives you a rough idea of what realm you got to be in to start saving. Now, if you do 20%, it's a lot more going down, but you won't have something called PMI. Essentially what that is property mortgage insurance. I'm pretty sure that's what it stands for. And all that is, in simple terms, is well, because you put less down, we're going to make you pay more in your monthly payments. But the truth is, if you're in a state or city that allows you to do the 3% down, I recommend it because it's a lot easier to get started than you trying to come up with 20%. Because 20%, say, of a $300,000 house, just for simple math, like I said, is $60,000. That's a lot of money just to say, okay, that's not including the fees you need to come up with too. So you're looking at $60,000 on top of $15,000. That's a lot. So much easier to come up with 9,000 plus the $15,000. It's a huge difference just to get started, and you pay that difference on a monthly basis. And keep in mind too, because we're doing this for investment, someone else is going to be paying that for you, generally speaking. So I wrote down these numbers real quick because I didn't want to take the time to write them down as we go through the video, because just to save a little bit of time. Generally speaking, when it comes down to you, we already kind of went over just purchasing the house real quick. So we're going to go down and go into the concept of when you're renting, whether, it's a 1 family, 2 family, whatever the case is, 3 family, whatever the case is. But generally speaking, in every area, you have the more affordable side of town and the more expensive side of town. And so we just break down here, affordable, expensive. Obviously, I abbreviate the A and the E going forward. And these numbers to give us an idea of what we're going to be charging for rent when it comes to us, trying to make up the difference in our investment when we're living in a unit and renting it out. So we'll come back to that in a moment. Or at least leave those figures on the side so that way we can reference them when we need to. So we're just going to break down some quick examples of this in terms of what people get into, what are some of the options depending on where you live and how much you're trying to spend. Generally speaking, we're going to first start with large cities, because I'm in a large city. There are a lot of people in a large city. Large cities are a lot more harder to calculate. So take a place like, we'll say New York City, for example. New York City has low taxes, but they have high prices. Then you have other places, we'll say like, within that New York, general lower New York area, you have things like, say, Westchester, and then places like Long Island, where the prices of the homes are a little less than New York City, but the taxes are extremely outrageous, where their yearly taxes are like 14,000 for a 2-bedroom to a 2-family, going up 16,000, sometimes close to 20,000, and that's very common. Whereas in New York City, the taxes for that same equivalent home, though the price of the home may be more expensive, the taxes might be half that price. So it all calculates the same at the end of the day, because you're just making up for it, whether in the price of the home or taxes. So like I said in the beginning of the video, so with that being the case, just know that big cities in general, or surrounding areas of big cities, are always just going to be more expensive. And at the end of the day, your equation has to come down to you getting a certain amount of income for the amount that you're paying monthly. So let's do some quick, easy math here. If we had, say, we'll say a 2-family home, right? We're going to do it, a 2-family home with, we'll say each floor has 2 bedrooms. So we got a 2-family home with a 2-bed on one floor, 2-bed on the next floor. And we'll say that you also got a basement. Okay, we're going to say that you're putting 3% down, and you're going to have taxes of, we're going to say, somewhere about like 16,000 taxes. Okay. Now, I forgot to mention, but one thing we're going to be utilizing in this, and then you guys should do the same, is there's some great apps out there, but one that I particularly like to use is the Zillow Mortgage Calculator. For Android, it's its own app as opposed to the regular Zillow property app. And then for iPhone, they're rolled into the same app. So essentially, after I bring it up, I'm going to go to Payment Calculator. I don't know how well you guys could see this because I know that maybe I'll lean this on here and maybe it gives you guys a little bit of a better view. So we're going to go to advance. We already got 300,000 plugged inside there. Let's see, what am I going to, I didn't make the price of this home. So we're going to do, say, we're going to do 350,000 for this home. And I'm sorry for the handwriting, but 3, 5, no, 1, 2, 3. And we're going to do the down payment of 3%. Like I said before, this makes it easier, which ends up calculating to $11,000, but we don't have to worry about that. The calculator is going to do all the work for us. The interest rate right now is showing, this usually takes the common or the general interest rate of the time. Right now it's saying 5.9%, and that's a big deal. These little factors that change, when things like that change, the interest goes up, because just maybe about a year ago, it was like maybe about 4%. Things like that increasing means that when you start doing your equations, you're going to have to start changing some numbers, either finding a home that costs a little less or maybe has more units that you'll be able to rent out. But you got to kind of play with certain things to fit as other things increase. So we're going to try to say you can finagle like a 4.5, hopefully. But even that is kind of on the high end. Property tax, we're going to do it on a dollar amount for the year. And we're going to go and say, we're looking at, like we said, 16,000. And to be honest with you, in some cities, it probably would be more than that, but we're going to go with that right now. And it sounds like a lot. It is a lot. For insurance, now, if you have somewhere around, and every state might be different, they're going to cost differently. You want to have somewhere around $1 million home insurance, because that covers you not for the entire damage of the home, but say something happens, someone slips on your property, you're able to cover that kind of thing as well. So that normally costs, for a yearly amount, this is usually not too expensive, but in big cities, that's somewhere around, $1,700 for the year. So that part is not an expensive part, even though, keep in mind too, this is not calculating certain places, hazard locations. So you'd have to look into that kind of research on your own. We're going to include mortgage insurance. That was the PMI I mentioned. So it automatically gets factored in there. When we do 3% down, it automatically throws it in there. And HOAs, we're leaving at 0. We're doing a 30-year term. We're going to always leave it at 30-year. That's the standard and typical. So what you're looking at is a monthly amount of $3,472 a month. Now, we didn't go and factor if we're on the affordable side or expensive side of town. At $350,000, if you're in a big city, you're probably on the affordable side of town. So this is going to give us affordable renting numbers. So we're just going to write that down here, affordable. And sorry that the paper seems very cluttered, and I hope you guys can see things. Let me move things over a little bit. I hope you guys can see things relatively well, because I like the fact that you can see me doing this in real time. So that's our monthly amount, 4.5 interest. Now, as I mentioned before, 2-bedroom. We have a basement too. So 2-bedroom. You can see these numbers here because I'm going to take this off the screen in a moment. This right here is because we only put 3% down. So our let's see, our mortgage insurance, that's the PMI, is $277. That's a homeowner's insurance. That's $1,700 for the year. That breaks down to that. That's the principal amount. And don't get confused too. Sometimes people say, oh, you can own a home. This is the mortgage. They're talking about the principal. They're not including the taxes, which you can see the taxes at $1,333 is almost just as high as the principal. So sometimes people will say, oh, you can own a home. The mortgage is only this low. Understand that's not including all the fees, and all the fees included are usually going to be double that number. So this just gives you a sense of what you're really at. So that's your monthly amount. Now, with that being said, you can actually refer back to our original video about the budgeting in our money management video about budgeting, where we budgeted $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month, and $4,000 a month, and kind of see how that works out with this after we break down, the amount that you're going to be making in rent. So let me just bring up my calculator, because we're going to end up using that in a moment. So For the affordable side, for 2 bedroom, we're looking at 1,600 to 1,800. So just for argument's sake, we're gonna do the low ball just for the purpose of, us seeing like, okay, if we were in that kind of crunch and we're not getting the most, we don't, we can assume, yeah, you're going to be able to get the 1,800 in the affordable side. You probably can, but we're going to do, the low end of that range because we come with a range. Let me just show it to you here again. So we have a range from 1,600, 1,800 for a 2 bedroom in the affordable side. So we're going to go, we're just going to go in the middle of that just to balance it out. We're going to go right in the middle of that. So 1,700 and 1,700, which, and in the basement, I like to say with the basement, you can get $1,000 for it, depending on if you're renting it. But I'm going to show you how this breaks down. So let's say you're single, or maybe you have like, significant other. The route you go about here is you say to yourself, I'm going to live in the basement. You live in the basement means now you're going to knock out that 1,000 as a form of income rent because you're taking up that space. Fine. That means now that you have a total of, should be $3,400, but let's get our calculator and start doing some of this math. So 17 blah blah times 2, and you're looking at $3,400. Now that equates to, look at that right there, 3,472. So that means you'd be left with a net of, if you were renting out both the top and the bottom, 42. So we'll say this on the side here because I don't want to make things too sloppy, but you're renting 2 units, and obviously we know we're living in the basement, and that equates us to a cost of $72. It's not including things like certain utilities and stuff like that, because generally you're paying for the heat and hot water, but your tenants are paying for their own electricity. So $72, you're owning a home, you're living in the basement. Now, like we broke down before, that whole monthly thing with how much you're making, whether it's $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month, $4,000 a month. Once you're breaking down that you're only paying this much, your cost of living has been completely eliminated. So now the idea of you handling this is very much a reasonable thing. I forgot to start the video with saying that most people don't know you could own a home for the cost of what you pay rent. Sometimes it could even be less than that. So if you wanted to occupy one of the major units, you could do that. Now, that would be the equation. If you're renting 2 units, you're living in the basement. You're, for the most part, you could say you're breaking even, but the fact that you're saving your entire check means you're making out, because in any other scenario you're paying rent, this and that. So you take the rest of your money, you start saving up, whether you want to invest in more property, you rinse and repeat, or you start investing in stocks the way I showed in the previous video. Just refer back to the previous video in regard to that. So you could go with that equation, or say if you need a little bit more room, okay, you need the 2 bedroom. So here's what you would do in that. I'm just going to throw this out there because a lot of people get caught in the whole renting basements, because basements are not quote unquote legal to be rented out, and they rent it out to people and it can become a problem. So the way you get around that is you take the first ground floor. We'll assume that this is the top floor because it's above it. This is the ground floor and that's the basement. You take the ground floor and the basement and you rent them both together. So now it's almost like that person's getting extra room, extra space. Say if it's got a room in it and a general space mixed with the kitchen and a bathroom. You would then rent that out with that. So, and just attack on an extra $1,000 with it. So in that case, if we're doing the math, now you are renting 1 unit plus basement. Okay, that's going to be 2,700 is what you're making. So you're going to take the 3,472. You're going to minus 2,700, and now you're left with $772 of a cost. So you have a cost of $772, and that's what you're paying now for rent. Most people probably paying like $1,000 for rent or whatever the case is. I did in the budget video the breakdown of living expense when we did the budget video, so that would directly apply to this scenario right here. Matter of fact, not to get sloppy and all over the place, but I have some notes from that previous video here, and like we did here, for living expenses in the $2,000 a month budget was $700, either total or partial, meaning because you're roommating or whatever the case is. Now you could take that same $700 that would apply there. You're now living in your own unit, 2-bedroom, with your family, whatever the case is, your starting family, and you're renting out the other units, the basement of the other unit, and at that point you just have the cost of that much, but you're still making out. I'm going to tell you why. Because not only is that relatively cheap rent to be having your own home, having your own driveway, parking space, the comfort, the creature comforts that come with it, you also are gaining equity. So all that money that's going back into the home, it's yours. Now, granted, there's a large percent of that going into taxes. There's a large percent of that going into interest. But at the end of the day, whatever is there, so say if after 10 years, because a lot of times in the beginning of the first 10 years of owning the home, that's mostly going to interest. But say after 10 years pass and you've now brought the home down to we'll say, since most of that's interest, 300,000. You pay 50,000 off in 10 years. The point is, the person who paid that is the people you're renting to. So you didn't pay that. So now you have been paying very cheap rent, relatively speaking, $772, and you have $50,000 of equity. And because 10 years later, the value of the home probably would have gone up in a big city area, you're probably looking at 10 years later, the value of that home's almost doubled. And now you would have paid 50,000 off of that, making the leftover cost 300. But if the value now is like say 600, you now have an equity of $300,000 of when you sell it, the potential that you can put in your pocket. Not that you need to sell it, because guess what? You could just keep collecting rent on it. And whenever you're ready to move from that place, now you're renting out the whole thing. So let's just do that. You're renting all. And that leaves you with the 300,472 minus 44. So a negative 928, but let's do it in reverse for the higher number. At the top, minus 3,472. And that is 928. So you have a profit of 928 if you were renting the entire thing. So maybe you're in a situation where you already have a place to live and you're able to get the whole thing and rent the whole thing out. Now you're making a profit of 928. So it's still collecting the equity like we just said, because the other people are paying for all that. The tenants are paying for all that. So it's like free money in the bank over the years. It's gaining value for the home over the years too. So now it's getting more valuable, plus what the tenants are putting into it. But also, guess what? You have a little profit on the side. So now you could take that and do what you need with it. Maybe you're banking it, maybe you're investing it, maybe you're saving it up for another property to rinse and repeat. So that gives you an idea on how that plays out. Now we're going to do another example of something a little more extreme. I'm just going to do one more example. I could do a ton of examples. We're going to do another example of something a little bit more extreme, a little bit tough to squeeze out, because I want to give another aspect of things that's a little more maybe not in your favor, but it gives you a sense of understanding things. I'm not going to go into the small city scenarios in this video. Maybe in another video we will, and go into that more detail, even though I have some examples of that inside the book that is going to be in the link in the description. But we're going to now say a big city scenario. And like I said, smaller cities are easy to manage. So if you can understand the big city, it's so much easier to understand the smaller cities. But so now we're going to do in the more expensive neighborhood, and we're going to do a, say, $600,000 home. And it's the expensive neighborhood. And we're going to say it's a 3-family. And we're doing our same thing, 3% down, and the rent, the taxes this time we're gonna say is a lot more higher now because we're in an expensive area. We have 3 units and a basement, so it's 3 units and a basement. You always want to try to have that basement. It gives you flexibility. So we're gonna do 3 units and a 3-family unit in a basement, and we're gonna say that our taxes right now are $22,000 in taxes. I know it sounds very high. It is high. So we're gonna do, how many bedrooms we're gonna do with this one? We're going to do, let's play around with it. Let's make it a little interesting. We're gonna say that on the very top you got a 2-bedroom, and on the ground floor you got a 3-bedroom, and then you got the basement. I like to normally say that the basement really doesn't change regardless of the, what area, just because you don't want to, that's a wild card, so you don't want to bank on it too much. So once again, we're looking at, like we said before, looking at a 2-bedroom for the expensive size, 17,000 to 21. We're going to go somewhere in the middle with that. And then for the 3-bedroom, 2,200 to 2,800. So yes, that it depends on like the amenities, the situation, the setup. You can kind of squeeze a little something out of it. So that's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking at the moment. Yeah, that's what we're looking at the moment. So let's see. So the 2-bedroom, like I said, on the expensive, we're gonna go to $2,000. And then for the 3-bedroom, we're not gonna overdo this one, but we're gonna go with in the good neighborhood, in the expensive neighborhood. We're gonna go and say we're gonna go with like 26. That's somewhere in the middle. We're gonna go with like 2,600. So, and then obviously the basement, we're gonna keep that at 1,000. Now, let's calculate what we're paying a month, our mortgage. Okay, so we're gonna reset some of these numbers here. So we're gonna be looking at 600. We said. That's about right. We're gonna do 3% down still, so that's $18,000 in this case. Now the interest, we're gonna keep the same. You know what? We're gonna change the interest because this scenario, I'm trying to make one where it's a little more challenging. So we're gonna go to 5%. We're trying to squeeze so you can see that in a scenario where it is tighter, in how much adjustment or how much you'd have to look for, because I don't want to just paint just the complete easy scenario. We don't want to obviously go to a scenario where it's just completely unaffordable, but we also want to show like a little bit of a struggle scenario, so that way okay, these are the numbers I got to play with. Maybe I got to find a place that has a little less price, less taxes, whatever the case is. Homeowner insurance can stay the same because still $1 million will cover everything. So with all that being the case, our monthly amount is, as you see there on the screen, $5,575 a month. Okay, sorry for the handwriting being all over the place. I'm right behind the camera, so a month. So in this scenario here, let's do the whole, you're staying in the basement. We're gonna do that first. So rent, let's get my calculator up here, and we're gonna rent 2 units. Now keep in mind, now we've got one that has 3 bedrooms, one that has 2 bedrooms. You're gonna live inside the basement, same scenario as we did above. Okay, so in that case, you're making a profit of 4,600. So you can already see that we're less breaking even than we were before in the scenario where we were into the basement. Minus 4,600. So now you're paying a cost of 975. But you know what? It's still not that bad because, is that right? Yes, that's right. It's still not that bad because you still own a home. You still are paying less than you probably were paying in rent. As I said before, if you're making the $2,000 a month, that may not fit into your budget. But if you are doing the $3,000 a month, and here I have my previous notes from before, from when I was doing the budgeting video. Go back and check that video out. Living expense for the $3,000 a month was $1,000, so you would fall into that range. Now, obviously, you don't want to be in a situation where you're like just able to barely handle things, but keep in mind, in that same breakdown scenario of budget, you're saving 680. You have 300 for miscellaneous. So maybe that miscellaneous is covering your difference a little bit if it's a tight squeeze along with your savings. Well, guess what? Just owning the home is saving you money. So that in itself is a thing. So maybe you don't want to you can't do any extra savings, but hey, you own a home. So it's something to think about. If you don't want to go the route of investing, you just want that savings to go into having the home. That's fine too, because that in itself is an investment. So that's that scenario. Now let's go to the scenario of you are renting one unit plus the basement. Now we're going to assume same scenario. You only need the 2-bedroom. You're making it work. Maybe it's just you and a spouse and you got one other kid, or maybe you got 2 small kids and they're sharing a room, at least for now. You can rent out the basement and the 3-bedroom to somebody and they have that whole space. So, even though in this case, if the 2-bedroom was the one on the ground floor, someone with a 2-bedroom would be more likely to want the extra space of the additional basement than someone with a 3-bedroom. But 9 times out of 10, the ground floor is going to have the bigger apartment if it's going to have a difference in apartment size, because sometimes the upper apartments kind of get smaller because you get to the roof and it starts kind of closing in on the setup. Those who know what I'm talking about, they know what I'm talking about. So in this case, 5,575 minus, so we're going to combine those, so 3,600 equals, so now you're paying a lot more for the rent in this case because you're occupying the 2-bedroom, which you're paying around the exact cost that you would be making in rent for it. So you have a cost now of $1,000 more than what you were just previously paying. Like I said, that's really not a big deal, because if you're in, anyone who knows who's living in a large city, you're probably paying like way more than $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom. You could be paying about $2,000 a month. Sometimes you could be paying $2,500 a month if it's like some luxury apartment or whatever the case is. In this case, you get to come home to your own driveway, your own garage. You don't have to worry about parking in the middle of the night. You can warm up your car without having to worry about, and for those who live in cold cities, they know what I'm talking about. You can warm up your car without having to worry about, like my car is on, someone might break into my car. No, you're in your own yard, in your driveway, and you're warming up the car. Come home with groceries, you could just walk right into the house. You don't have to be worried about coming from 2 blocks away finding parking. So all those little creature comforts are a factor when you consider that you're paying that much versus paying somewhere else where you'd probably have to additional pay parking too. Now we're going to do the scenario where we're renting it all out. Renting all. And in that case, you're looking at 5,575 minus, let's see, 5,600, and leaving you with $25 profit. So you're getting a profit of $25, which is the same as just saying you're breaking even. But nonetheless, like I mentioned before, you're making all that equity. That's all going back into the property. So at the end of the day, 10 years from now, when your property goes down to, say, you paid $100,000 off of it in 10 years. So like I said in the beginning, it's all interest. So it's kind of disproportionate. But in that first 10 years, you paid $100,000. Guess what? They paid $100,000. You didn't. But also in 10 years, that property would have gone up in value. So maybe it's worth, $1 million now by that time, 10 years later. You didn't pay for any of that. You're still making your full check. So in the scenarios where we said you're making $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month, even though I think you kind of need to be at least on a $3,000 a month to kind of afford this scenario, but $3,000 a month or $4,000 a month, now your entire living budget is going to savings throughout this whole scenario. And that's a big deal in itself. Well, I'll bring up these, like I said, from the past videos. Your $3,000 a month, your $1,000 in is going from in this scenario where you're now making that profit, $1,000 of your living cost is now going straight into whatever you want to save to, along with your savings amount that we said before. So 1,680 is now going to savings to whatever, and you're still gaining because of equity. And in the scenario where we're making $4,000 a month, that $1,500 now is being saved because you're making an even split along with the extra savings that you have. So you have like about $2,600 a month that you're saving. So, if you're renting the whole thing out, because maybe you're in a situation where you're living with family, you're like, hey, this is all going to be pure investment. I'm living with family for the meantime. Let's just collect that money, and you're doing that. So just to kind of give you that idea, and this was a little bit more extreme where we're paying a higher, I didn't write it down here, versus here we were paying, I think it was like 4.5%, and then here we're paying 5%. So it is a little bit higher, but nonetheless, it kind of gives you an idea that even if you have to play with the numbers, you got to try to make it work, but you kind of get an idea. Download the calculator, play with some of these numbers, see what fits you, do some scenarios, and that way you can see where you fall in, what line of budgeting you fall in. So you could say, you know what? I can't go above this price of the home when I'm putting this much down and this is the taxes if I only have this many units or this many bedrooms per unit or whatever the case is. And that's pretty much it. Take a look at what I wrote here in terms of how much for the renting, that you could kind of get, so you could kind of play around things. These numbers always change over the years, but, use it as a reference and try to make it work. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below, and I will get back to you with anything. We're going to do some more videos on similar topics later on down the line, so don't think this will be the end. We will revisit these kind of things in better detail. But take this knowledge with you, make it work for you, and we'll see you in the next video.